the beer.
Ooh. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I'm chatting with my friend Zachary J. Davis, who is, I believe you're saying you're into psychology and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah. I got into psychology a long time ago. I started working with people with disabilities back in 2009. Cool. Yeah, and then I didn't realize it then, but it was the field that I wanted to go into. I actually went into journalism first and went through journalism school as all of this shit was going on in the media, and the name of journalism was sort of just dragged through the mud. So, I decided that wasn't a thing that I wanted to do. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think that's awesome. Especially with like disabled people, I think that's really cool of you to be doing that.
And I still work with people with disabilities, which is really fun.
That's cool. That's very cool. Guys, below is a link to his Twitter if you want to follow him on Twitter. I would say stalk. Everybody stalks everybody.
I'm renewed to Twitter. I got rid of my account years ago. And then I've just recently gotten back on, and wanted to try to build a presence, and actually that's how I met Neil.
That's right. And by the way, go and follow him on Twitter so you can build up that following again.
That would be nice.
I Googled your name just to see if there was anything, because this is before I talked to you, to see if there's anything that I could put in the link description box down below, or links for it. And you share the same name as some guy. I guess this happened quite a few years ago, that bludgeoned his mom to death with a sledgehammer.
Really?
Yes.
That's not me.
No. I was going to say, I highly doubt that's you. I'm like, geez, I hope this isn't the guy. Jesus, fuck. This is going to be a whole different conversation. But Dr. Phil apparently interviewed him. So there you go. Anyways, Zach, what I do here is I chat with people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of. And I usually like to start out by saying, take us back, as early as you can remember being a believer, and what you went through during that. And also around the time when you first started realizing or coming to the realization that everything that you've learned and were told is all bullshit, and how you kind of found your way out of it.
Yeah, it goes really far back, very far back. I remember back in, I think it was first grade. I was always in and out of religious schools. Started back in Virginia. There was a Christian school that we were enrolled in. And I don't remember the Christian stuff as much as I just remember being a kid back then. But I do remember growing up in the church. My dad was a youth pastor. And so that's where I really started. I've got a very religious family. I think that at this time, my brother and I are the only ones that are really out atheists. But yeah. So let's see. My dad was a youth pastor. He was a youth pastor for many different churches, and my reluctance towards religion sort of started way back then in my mind, but I didn't really understand what was going on. I had questions and doubts, as many people do. But when I watched him go through the church and how he was treated, he was actually very mistreated within many different churches. There was a time that he was fired from a church for wearing a sweater, which was very weird because it wasn't a godly look. And then the most recent and last experience that we had in the church. Oh,
Zach, what is a godly look?
I don't know.
Maybe you knew something there that I was unaware of, because I thought maybe dressed like a priest. I don't know what that would be.
He didn't come into church with a suit and a tie, and he was the youth pastor, so there was an expectation that whoever was a leader in the church was going to look as professional as possible. And there is this look that they expected from him, and he didn't meet that look. So that led to some. I obviously don't have the full story. That was back when I was a kid, so I don't really remember that much. But that's the way the story was told to me, and it's weird. It was kind of weird. And then the most recent experience is the one that kind of sticks with me the most. He was a youth pastor, and the lead pastor at the church sort of saw him as a threat, because the kids and the parents liked him more than they liked the lead pastor. Oh. And yeah, it was very, very interesting. And so, and at that time, I was actually going to, I think, middle school at that time in the church. So the church had its own little private school that it was running within the church. And right. I just remember those being the worst teachers I have ever had. They were incredibly dogmatic all of the time. They had this expectation of how we were supposed to behave as kids. They had this expectation of who we were supposed to be as people. And I hated it. I will say, though, I was the kind of person that I don't like dealing with difficult conversations, and I sort of shy away from them, mostly because of some interesting trauma history in my past with my parents, because although my mother isn't necessarily abusive, she can be very emotionally abusive from time to time. And that sort of led me as a kid to kind of put myself into a little cocoon. And I watched as my siblings endured some of the wrath of her emotional abuse. And I did everything the opposite of that. I would follow everything that she said. I would try to figure out exactly what she liked, and I would live that life. And I think that's one of the reasons why it actually took me a lot longer to come out of religion, because I've made myself what was ideal for the people in my life, because I didn't want to deal with that conflict.
Right. I see.
Yeah.
Well, emotional abuse is tricky one, because
it is.
I mean, I think I grew up with a kid whose mom was quite emotionally abusive, and it got to a point after a while where you didn't really know if she was being emotionally abusive or just it was a weird thing. It was really bizarre, but you knew that something was going on. Yeah, but you knew there's something going on, because he would go through times where he was just like, you couldn't talk to him, right? Like he was just depressed or something, and it was all basically because of stuff that she said to him. Yeah.
Actually, I watched that with my siblings. Two of my siblings, I don't know, all three of my siblings dealt with that. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I sort of cocooned myself, because they became depressed. I believe, if I remember correctly, all three of them have attempted suicide to some degree. They've at least had the thought in their mind. I've luckily never had to deal with that. And it may have been because I really put myself into that cocoon. But I saw that in my siblings, and to this day, it kind of it makes me sad, because the more that I learn about being an atheist and just losing my belief altogether, I've begun to recognize a lot more of those things from my childhood that I didn't recognize before. It's very interesting.
Sure. It's kind of like you get all introspective about it, Yeah. I mean, lots of things that I didn't know about or realize or recognize as a kid, I do now, of course, right? But, I think we can all. I think we all kind of have stories that are like that from our childhood. We just didn't realize what it was that was going on, and now we do, and we're like, oh, for fuck's sakes, right? Like, what the hell? But
I was a really good Christian too. I mean, I really was. I was one of those Christians who I knew what the right thing was to say. I was the person who had so much confidence in my faith all of the time that you wouldn't think today that I would be an atheist back then. Because of the confidence that I had. Yeah, when my wife and I met, there was this. We both attended this Christian Campus Crusades, also known as Crew event. So we went out to Lake Tahoe, California for a domestic missions trip of sorts. And the idea was to go there and kind of learn how to talk to people about your faith, how to express what Christianity was, and really try to convince people that they needed God, right? And so during that event, there was this meeting where everybody sat down on the lawn. There were probably around 30 to 50 kids there. I mean, between the ages of 20 and like 30-ish. And then all of the leaders would sit down, and this was before they left. There was a portion where the students were with the leaders, and then when the students became the leaders, they were trying to sort of do a pass the torch type of thing, a Jesus washes your feet type of moment. And so, and that's what they actually did. That they sat down, all of us, and washed our feet. It was so awkward.
Really?
Still to this day, yeah, it was a very awkward moment. But during that, they were sharing their wisdom as human beings, as good Christians, and one of the statistics that one of them felt they had to share with us was that like something like 1 in 10 of you will not be Christians in say 5 to 10 years. And I was thinking inside my head, it's like, oh fuck no, that's not going to be me. That's definitely not going to be me. Well. Sure enough, enough events happened to where I sort of got away from Christianity altogether and began to really kind of piece through the things that I believed in. And part of that actually came from my interest in cults. I got really into Scientology because I kept seeing signs of it all over the place. And I'm like, what is Scientology? I just want to know what it is. Yeah, I thought that it was just some sort of like scientifically centered group that was sort of religious, but they weren't really that religious. I was wrong.
All hail Xenu.
Oh yeah, all hail to Xenu.
I had Chris Shelton on my show
some
time ago. Yeah, and he was my first adventure into leaving Scientology, we'll say. He's a nice guy. He's got some different views, that's for sure, and not everyone likes him or agrees with him. But overall, I think he's a pretty good guy, and he means well. Yeah. But sometimes he says things, and people are like, "What?" So
yeah,
I think that's like leftover shit from being in Scientology myself.
That's sort of what I've chopped it up to. He's but his perspective is pretty amazing. Just what he experienced in that cult was pretty phenomenal, and coming out and actually speaking about it, I think is pretty phenomenal as well.
Yes, for sure. All right, so when did you finally decide that you wanted out of this belief system?
So, I mean, it wasn't really a decision; it just sort of happened.
Okay.
But when my brother passed away, I think, when was it exactly? Back in 2016, something like that. He died in a violent car accident. It's fine. I've definitely dealt with it, but he died in a car accident.
The same way, one of my biological sisters was killed in an accident as well.
Yeah. It's a jarring experience, and it was him being stupid. He was on a back road, and what we suspect is that there were a bunch of deer, and he saw them after he turned a corner. And he was going, I think what we ended up getting from the police were he hit the tree at 114 miles an hour, which means he was going faster than that before he slammed on the brakes and then lost contact with the road. But I had sort of an existential crisis at that moment when I was praying shortly after it all happened and before I had come back from the Portland area. Back to Wisconsin, which is where I am now. But we were living out in Portland. And so we were staying with some friends of ours who were going to take us to the airport. And at night, I couldn't sleep. It was still, a pretty intense situation in my head. I really hardly slept at all that night. Right. But I was praying to this God that I believed in, and I convinced myself, and I knew that this wasn't true, that this was the weirdest thing. And I think that this is why it really sort of started pushing me in the direction of unbelief, was that I was talking to my imaginary brother in my own head, thinking
Right.
that he was like actually talking back to me, saying that he was in heaven, because at that time he wasn't really he wasn't a Christian. He was a very religious type of person. He was sort of new agey in a way. But
Oh no.
yeah.
We're talking like crystal healing and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Like I still have a crystal. It's actually
I still
sitting
have
over
all
there,
mine
and yeah.
from back in the day.
For the remembrance purposes, I encased the crystal that he gave me in epoxy into a lightsaber hilt, which I made on my lathe.
Nice. I mean, what else are you going to do with it at this point, right?
Exactly.
That's fucking
sadly,
cool. I like that.
Sadly, the electronics failed. I have no idea what happened, but as I was finishing it, some wire broke, and it's all internal, because I couldn't figure out a way to get all of the wires to hook up and actually work without gluing it all together, like completely completed. And so when I put the final triggers and whatnot in there, and this is after I'd done all the testings, all the lights stopped working. So it's a just for show hilt now, but it's still pretty cool.
That is neat.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So I was praying to my imaginary brother, and I consciously knew that he wasn't talking to me. But over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I tried to convince myself that he was. It was really weird, but I was aware that it wasn't true. It was very interesting. I was aware that it wasn't true, and I even told pastors. And I don't even know why I did it, but maybe it was because I was trying to affirm that it was true.
Yeah.
Again, knowing that it really wasn't. And so that started me on this kind of weird internal journey. And I'd shared with my wife that at the time I was going through this existential crisis. I wasn't really sure what I believed. I still believed in a God, but I didn't 100% know if it was the Christian God, but I acted as if it was. And then over time, I started doing some research. I started looking into channels like the Atheist Experience, which I know that a lot of people commonly end up diving into as they're sort of pursuing this journey of non-belief. And I don't know if they know it, but they have had such an immense influence on people, and it's quite amazing what they've done. But
I actually have this coming Thursday, Matt will be on my show.
Oh, sweet. I'll be watching.
Yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started investigating more, and I really got into understanding the Christian Bible in and of itself. I could never get through the Old Testament, like not in one shot. I would read random pieces, and then I would go to sermons and hear what pastors had to say about the Old Testament. And I sort of just took them on good faith. But I did read through the entire New Testament, but I never really sat down and critically analyzed it, which was very interesting for me, because I critically analyze literally everything. There's not a single thing in this world that I don't critically analyze. And I always think that I'm wrong until I have sufficient evidence to...
Hold it. You don't pull out a bagel and go to put something on it and then start critically analyzing it before you chow it down or anything like that, do you?
No. I don't
like I like to critically analyze things too, but I'm not going to critically analyze my beer before I crack it open.
Yeah, information, things that deserve critical analysis, I analyze. Yeah, I love doing research. I love trying to figure out what is true and what is not. But it was weird because I never did that with Christianity. For all of the years that I was in it, I just took it as absolutely true. And maybe it was because that's what I grew up in. That's always what I knew to be true. It was the thing that was always told to me to be true. All of the books that I read were either read to me through a Christian perspective, or they were Christian affiliated in some way. The curriculum during my homeschool years was very Christian affiliated.
You were homeschooled.
I went back and forth, actually. My parents went from homeschooling me during some periods of time, because we moved around a lot. My dad was a youth pastor, so going to different churches as he sort of left some, was let go from others. His job ended up having us move quite a bit. So over the course of, say, K through K through 8. 8th grade was when I finally went to public school for good, and at that point, I'd been in Christian private schools. I'd been homeschooled. I'd been through so many different experiences of education that it really was just ingrained in me, and I didn't take a look at everything after that through a critical eye. I remember back in biology when as they were teaching me about evolution, I just shut my brain off. I learned to memorize the information in there, but I did shut my brain off. I believed that the Earth was 6,000 years old. I was a young Earth creationist who thought the flood had taken out absolutely everything. And looking back, I was like, holy crap, did I actually believe that? And I did. I don't even remember what it was like to believe that, but I did. It was very interesting.
Wow. Even
talk about critically analyzing your beer.
Even though there are millions of shows you could see on TV that are scientifically based that talked about how old the Earth actually is based on the evidence that they found in rocks and stuff like that, you still it always blows my mind that people can't accept facts that are discovered.
Well, and to some degree, I think that might have been because any time that my mother was around when those types of things, when the evidence was being presented, she would immediately snap and say, that's not true. Like that's bogus. And so that's how I saw the world. I saw it through my mother's eyes and many of those topics. And I was a science geek. I really was a science geek. I read all kinds of space novels, and I loved researching just astronomy in general. It was something that I wanted to get into when I was a kid. So I was obsessed with all of that stuff. And despite being aware of how vast the universe really is, and how much stuff just is there, and how long that stuff took to get where it is, and how long it took light to travel from where it was to my eyes, I didn't really think about it. I didn't think about it deeper than that Christian eyeball that I put everything through, that Christian lens that I put everything through. And so that really stunted me. And it wasn't until, say, between the ages of 25 and 26 that it really hit me. And that was basically when my brother had passed. And I'd had thoughts. We had all had thoughts, here and there about, well, is it really true? I remember some times back when I was in high school, I was a bit of an awkward kid, and things didn't necessarily go the way that I wanted them to go. I wasn't very popular. I didn't try to be popular, but I didn't really have a whole lot of actual friends. And I feel like that came from just not being in one place. I didn't have people that I grew up with. I was the oddball out just because I was new all of the time. And so even though I tried to make friends, I was never actually close to anybody. So when I tried to pursue relationships with people, whether it be friendships or even romantic relationships, I was always unsuccessful. And so I remember just going out on late night drives, being mad that I didn't have these relationships with people, and like screaming out to God to give me some sort of sign. And every single time that failed, every time. And if I did see something, I would literally just pick that one instance, and it meant more to me. That one instance meant more to me than all of the other instances that existed beforehand. And before, I didn't realize that I was just cherry picking, but now I'm looking back and thinking, wow, I literally just did everything that I could to make myself believe.
Wow. Once you came out of the belief system, did you kind of think back to those days and kind of just slap yourself a little bit and go, what the hell was I thinking?
Sometimes, but I don't feel like I'm the same person anymore. I really do feel like a completely different person. And so I don't really look back and regret of that past, because that's the experience that I had. It was the circumstance that I just happened to grow up in. We don't choose the circumstances that we end up in, and those were mine. And so I I think that it was a good thing that I experienced those things and believed those things and thought those things, because I have a better understanding of what the world really looks like. And
Right.
although I did kind of go through that angry atheist phase where I was just literally mad at absolutely everything. But I'm also noticing that as I'm talking to you, I say literally way too often. But I look back and
That's literally okay.
Yes. But I appreciate the experience that I had. I appreciate the living in that environment, because I know it. I know and actually work with many people from many different religions, and because of that, I don't blame them for anything. I'm not mad that they're of any particular faith. I understand that that's what they grew up with, or that's what they were convinced by, or that's what they're convinced by now. And I try to engage in conversations with them about that as often as I can, and try to encourage humanism more than anything else, and just live a life that is humanistic instead of dogmatic in any way. And yeah, and it's starting to work out a lot better. I'm sort of still at that tail end of the angry atheist phase. There's a lot of things that I'm mad about. The last year of politics has not helped that at all.
Oh my goodness!
But no. and as I'd mentioned before, I live with my parents, and we're currently just working off the debt from school, and we're almost there. We're very close. We have like 3 months left of private debt, and that's our goal. And then we're going to save up money and then go buy a house, and then I'm going to go get my doctorate. But because I live with my parents right now, it can be very difficult, especially because I was hiding my non-belief for a very long time, because I didn't know how to share it. And especially living with religious people, the people who raised me, who taught me the religion, who really influenced me in that, it was very difficult to engage in conversation about my non-belief.
Right.
And it actually, it came out very, very poorly. It was not how I wanted it to come out, which was unfortunate. But
well, you never know how that ball's going to bounce once you throw it, right? So
no. And I sort of just spit it out. It was on this random night because I was really pissed, because my dad had approached me about something that I had posted on Facebook. I had been trying to engage with people that I had known, who were really kind of diving deep into this conspiratorial thinking and trying to challenge them on their views. I wasn't telling them that they were wrong. I was simply attempting to engage in a conversation and asking them how they came to those conclusions and whether or not they believed that it was actually rational, if that was a rational way of coming to their conclusions. And those conversations generally didn't end up going anywhere, sadly. And so, at least not with everybody. There were a couple people who I was able to engage with, but others who just either would respond negatively. They would respond as if I was punching at them, and so I started to kind of wean back on how much I was posting on Facebook about politics, because it became toxic to me and my mental health as well. And it wasn't until after I had come out to everybody as an atheist that I stopped using Facebook altogether. But there was one moment where I had posted something about during the George Floyd protests, where many of you probably actually know this particular event, where I think it was a naval officer who or a naval veteran or Air Force veteran had gone up to the National Guard and was just talking to them. And it ended in them actually hurting him, breaking his finger, and then pepper spraying him. And I work in a field where I actually, I teach de-escalation techniques to people who support others with disabilities. And so I'm looking at their actions and thinking, it doesn't matter who you are. That is never the right response to anyone, unless that particular person was attempting to cause harm to others, but that person didn't show any visual signs of wanting to cause harm to themselves or others. And even if a threat was made, even if a verbal threat was made, the answer is not to immediately pepper spray and hit somebody with a baton.
No.
It's to try and de-escalate that person first.
Yeah,
And
so it
so
doesn't end up
I
like
tried to engage. What was that?
de-escalate, so it doesn't end up where you're having to hit people and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was trying to challenge that particular instance and get people to think more critically about these. And so my dad wasn't happy that I had posted that, because he actually works in the criminal justice system now, and so he challenged me on thinking, it's like, well, you don't actually know what was happening. And so I was trying to explain to him that I wasn't attempting to claim that I knew exactly what was happening. Just from what we do see, the evidence that we do see, it's not enough to say that their actions were justified in this particular instance. And I don't remember how exactly the conversation escalated, but it continued to escalate. And eventually it just came out with me screaming out that I'm an atheist. It's like, I don't believe in all of this stuff. I don't come to conclusions the same way that you do.
Right.
And so it wasn't a happy experience for me. I was hoping that I was going to be a lot more civil, but it didn't end up being civil.
Well,
yeah,
we try to have the civil conversations. They don't always work out that way.
yeah, and I'm a bit disappointed in myself too. I feel like I could have done a much better job of dealing with that situation, especially considering that it came out of talking about de-escalation. I didn't really do a good job of de-escalating myself.
No. Yeah, it seems odd when you're having a conversation about that and it just goes the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. And stress does weird things to you. I mean, even if you know these techniques, you know how to calm yourself down and to even attempt to calm others down. When the stress is really high, it's very easy to lose control, and that definitely happened to me in that situation, sadly.
Yeah, well, shit happens. You just try to learn and keep going.
Do better next time.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you once you were free and clear of this fallacious belief system? What was it like for you telling your folks? Like you were saying earlier that it was kind of awkward for you when you came out as an atheist, but has that since then, has it had a really detrimental effect on some of your family relationships?
Yes and no, actually. It strengthened my relationship with my youngest brother by quite a bit. It was kind of weird because he was the first person that I came out to, because he came out to me at basically the exact same time. He had come home from college and he was explaining to me and my wife that he was gay. And it wasn't something that we were too surprised about, but it definitely wasn't something that was being very positively received by the rest of my family. So he sort of began to trust me a lot more to talk about who he is, where he wanted to go in life. And so in that moment, he let me know that he was questioning his beliefs too. And I basically dropped the beer that I was holding. I was like, dude, same. And so at that moment, we had this very interesting connection, and we were able to really kind of, and still today, we're able to talk about our disbelief and talk about how we are experiencing the world, and talk about our education as well. He went into politics, basically, and so he shares what he learns about politics through his non-belief perspective, and I research psychology and I share that kind of stuff, and we talk about just normal things, just how we can better both ourselves and the world, as well as other people. That's sort of both of our goal, and that sort of became a goal for both of us as we left faith, which was very interesting, because even before, as a Christian, I felt like my goal was that. But it really wasn't. My goal was to convert more people. My goal was to make Christianity the world religion of the religions to end all religions.
Right.
That was what I was doing. And so when I left religion, that was no longer a goal that I had. That was instead, I was more focused on helping other people. And so it was nice to have that with my brother. With my sister, we had a very short conversation. I had released the letter to this open letter to all of my friends and family. And her only response was, "What does Ellie think about this?" I'm like, why don't you go and ask her instead of asking me, since she's the one that should be the interesting party in this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so I decided not to speak on behalf of my wife and let her speak for herself in that. And that was about it. I haven't really talked to her about anything else. There was one challenge that I made because through my sister, we have mutual friends on Facebook, and there were some very interesting things being shared about Reverend Warnock and his position on abortion. And so I challenged some folks who were very religious. They run a home church. I challenged some folks on that way of thinking, and I'm like, but does that, you're calling him a non-Christian, and yet he's a reverend. Where do you get that from? Basically, the whole no true Scotsman fallacy. And so that
I love that.
That was the last religious conversation that I had with my sister. And so we sort of just have this unspoken no religious conversation agreement to some degree. If it comes up, I'm more than happy to talk about my unfaith, and I'm more than willing to hear her out on her faith if that's something that she feels like she needs to share. But I'm not going to be convinced about going back to Christianity. It's like if some God proves themselves to exist, it's like I don't even know if I would follow that God. That's just, I don't know.
I would. Have you read his fucking bio?
Yes. I'm a stubborn person. I'm a very stubborn person.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that your brother came out as gay as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I've actually had quite a few of the members of the LGBTQIA plus community on the show before, trans people, gay people, lesbians, etc. And they're telling, most of them tell me that it's actually harder to come out as a non-believer / atheist than it was to come out as a member of that community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think your brother might agree with something like that?
I don't know. I haven't really asked him, to be honest. We've had conversations kind of similar to it, but it all sort of happened at the same time for him. So,
I see.
So okay. Yeah, I don't know what his thoughts are really on that one, especially considering that it happened at the same time. I don't even know if he knows what was the hardest one.
It's going to be hard to separate the two when you kind of came out of both of them at the same time too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
So since you found your way free of the system, is there any things that you sort of in your mind you wanted to improve upon as a person, knowing some of the harsh shit that you had going on when you were a believer? Maybe not harsh shit, but some of the ways you thought about things. Did you have this thing in your mind where you wanted to change yourself as a person in regards to those things?
Yeah.
And how did you do it too, by the way?
Honestly, it's a growing process. Although I was a bit of a science nerd growing up, like I had said, it was all filtered through that lens of Christianity. Right. I was very skeptical of doctors. I'm still afraid of doctors. I'm afraid of vaccines. Yeah, I've read all the research and completely agree that vaccines are perfectly safe, and that they have a huge benefit to our society. But
unless you're allergic to an ingredient, you're fine.
Yeah, but I'm emotionally afraid of them because of how I grew up, and so that's something that I'm working through. But I've changed my perspective on it. I'm definitely going to be vaccinated, but it's good. My confidence in science has, in a sense, skyrocketed because I went from that religious lens of science to a much more open and more robust understanding of science. And it's also pushed me into actually wanting to pursue a science degree. I actually want to get my doctorate in psychology and focus on clinical work. I want to be able to help people to understand themselves better and to improve upon their own lives, regardless of their belief system, regardless of who they are, and really just to help people. That's something that changed a lot. I went from just trying to figure things out and living a good Christian life to desiring more to help people improve their lives. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And it's admirable. Do you think when you get your doctorate, do you think that you might end up working for somebody like, say, Secular Therapy Project or Recovering from Religion, or even my friend, the Zacharys company, which is called Tempest Counseling?
Mm-hmm.
Where they help people to do stuff like that, people that have come out of religion that have been harmed by it?
Yes, actually, that is something that I'm looking into. I had mentioned to you that my wife and I are starting to work on the skeleton of a project that investigates the emotional toll on the emotional and mental toll that leaving faith, leaving ideologies, whatever they might be, leaving cults and extreme beliefs of any kind, what sort of toll that has on a person and how it affects them. And so I'm actually thinking ahead. I'm obviously not there yet. I'm not pursuing the doctorate currently, just trying to lead up to it. That is probably what my dissertation is going to end up being, is the investigation of the mental harms of, or not even the mental harms, but the mental effects of religious thinking and belief on a person as they leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've spoken with a couple of folks that do that sort of thing. One of the people I spoke to was Marlene Winnell. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she does little retreats with people, or little camps and getaways, and they talk about the sort of thing. And she's saying that that kind of environment really helps people to open up, because they don't feel like there's no, for lack of a better expression, there's no feeling of claustrophobia. Like you're not entrapped in a room somewhere or in a city somewhere. You're out in the woods and you're sitting around a fire like you would at camp or something, and you talk about this openly. And she tells me that a lot of people find that that's a lot more friendly of an atmosphere. Right. So something maybe.
I think that same tactic was used in that Campus Crusades retreat that my wife and I met at. Used. Really? Because that's really what it was. We were staying in these little cabins in Lake Tahoe, California. And every night we would sit around the fire and we would all converse about our faith every single day. That was the main topic for 3 months straight. And that's all we were doing.
Right. Well, that sounds like it might have actually been fun. I mean, aside from the whole religious connotation.
It was. Plus, I met my wife, and she's an amazing person. Going back to the how family sort of responded to me leaving. I was very afraid of telling my wife up until about a little over a year ago, a year and a month ago, basically. And I was afraid because, again, we met at that Christian camp. She was very religious. She came from an incredibly religious family who have not taken us leaving religion very, very well.
She did too. She pulled out.
She did too, and very quickly. It was very interesting.
That tells me, you saying that tells me that in the back of her mind, seeds had already been planted with doubt being there.
Possibly. I think she's watching now, so she can type in the chat what her thoughts are on that. But yeah, it was interesting because it was nice to have somebody to go on that journey with, instead of being alone. It was very freeing to just let that out, because I was stressed out about it for literally 2 to 3 years, because it had been on my mind. I was open about my existential crisis. That's basically what I just called it all of the time. But I wasn't sure where it was going or what was really happening in my head. And so I was trying to be a good person and let her know these are the things that I am dealing with. And that helped too, in incredible amount, because she was open to hearing me out. She was open to listening to me. She was open to attempting to understand, even if she didn't agree. And so that was very helpful even from the beginning. So even though I was very trepidatious of actually coming out as an atheist, the second that I did, we started investigating together, and she started looking at more of the philosophical arguments behind religion, and started asking herself, like, do these actually make the most sense? And she
the argument for religion, you mean?
The arguments for religion, the philosophical ones that,
I'll tell you what, they're dubious at best. That's all I can tell you.
I'm still surprised that William Lane Craig still has a career, but
That's funny. I was just at band practice today with the boys, and we got a new bass player. This is his second time out there, and I've got these songs that I've written that are all like atheistic type lyrics, like "Let It Go," meaning get rid of religion. "Cut the Strings" is another one.
Yeah,
and I'm singing all these words, and I kind of looked at Mike, is his name, our new bass player. And I go, dude, I'm singing all this stuff that, if you're a believer, probably sounds brutal. He goes, oh no, fuck no, I'm an atheist, just like pretty much everybody else in Canada.
Yeah,
which isn't exactly true, but we do have our Bible Belt-esque people here, especially in Alberta. Alberta's technically our Texas, is what it is.
Yeah, I've heard that Alberta's that.
PJ Smith wants in the chat wants to know why there's no Maple Leaf stickers, because YouTube, like myself, knows that the Leafs suck, and so they don't put any stickers there. Don't worry, there's no hockey stickers, PJ. I used to have a T-shirt back in the day when the Canucks went all the way to the finals against the New York Rangers, and we played the Leafs first, and so we and the T-shirt said we raked the leaves, and then we doused the flames, and then we shot the stars, because we played the Leafs and Flames and Stars, and then it was, and now we're going to take a big bite out of the Big Apple, which never happened. We lost in the 7th game, but that's okay. Anyway, enough hockey talk. So Canadian, man, you're so Canadian.
I don't really get into sports that much, so I don't know much about hockey or football, or baseball, or really anything.
Hockey's above sports, man. It's the best one there is. I'm kidding.
I'll agree with you, because I don't know.
Because I'm the host, right?
I'll agree with you by default.
Right. You think I'm about to like have a fucking maple syrup bath or something here in a second, and rub back bacon all over? No, let's not get carried away.
Please do that. That's the show now. Do
it on TikTok. It'll be viral within a second or two. Anyway,
it ends with the maple syrup oiling.
And I'll put little back bacon pasties over the nipples. There you go.
There we go.
I'm kidding. That's just disgusting, right, guys in the chat? I don't know if you can
absolutely.
You can see the chat, but if you do look up to your right, you'll be able to see what's going on in there. And your wife has made herself known in the chat now. So, awesome. Well, welcome, by the way. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi.
And that's amazing that the two of you were able to sort of join the forces there and find your way out of what I and many others consider to be a fallacious belief system. So
we got lucky. We got lucky to have each other. I think there's a lot of people that I've heard don't have that. I've heard stories of people who lose their relationships because of this. And it's sad. It's what's really sad is that we live in a secular country who claims to be open and accepting of all people, and yet the very religion that claims that they're accepting are very much okay with disfellowshipping. I know that's a different religion, but we'll use it here. Disfellowshipping of the members who leave and just cutting them off completely, and it's sad.
Yeah, well, for a secular nation, the people claiming to want to allow everyone to, practice whatever religion, freedom of religion, all that, don't seem to be all that really cool with it these days.
Yep. It's sad. It's very sad.
But
maybe it's just the pain of religion finally knocking itself out.
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, I got to tell you, I myself am. Well, technically, I'm still married, but we haven't been together since 2003. There's a whole story behind that. I'm not even going to get into that right now. But I think legally we would be considered separated because we haven't been together for that long, almost 10 years now. 20 years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky when I started doing this, and more people were sort of tuning in, and there's a lot of really good people out there that I've become friends with, and I like to consider anyone that I have on my show as a guest to be considered a friend. So Zachary, welcome.
Thank you.
Because I think these stories are really, really important to have out there, because
that's why I wanted to come on. Honestly, these types of stories helped me a lot coming out.
There you go.
In a sense, my relationships are in the atheist community online, because I don't really have any specific relationships, but having people to talk to every once in a while, it's nice to be able to just reach out and have somebody respond to questions or thoughts that I've had, especially as I've been coming out and kind of learning more about what not believing something really is. Which is kind of a weird thing to say, because not believing in something is simply just not believing in it.
Yeah, it's just not believing.
There's just nothing there.
Right, exactly.
But in our society, it's something that is a struggle for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. It is.
That makes sense.
It is. I mean, I think even being raised as a Jew myself, lots of my friends in the neighborhood were Christians. We even had a Jehovah's Witness family down the road, and there was a Hindu family also in the neighborhood. But being able to learn about the different religions and stuff like that, I think was a pretty good, we'll say, wedge in my belief systems where, I remember being young and having a lot of questions, even as a kid, thinking to myself, this stuff just sounds so mythological, like you hear about, you read the Greek mythologies, the Roman mythologies, Norse mythologies, even I was into some of even as a kid, I knew what Shintoism was, and I was into a lot of the Asian cultures, and reading about some of their mythologies, like spirits in the forests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it all just sounded like stories, which, ultimately is what they were. But, and then I read the New Testament, the Old Testament, and the Quran. I've even kind of plotted my way through most of the Quran, and holy fuck. All I can tell you is that shit is brutal. I mean, there's a lot of really nice poetic type shit in it, but
yeah. When I was still a Christian, I had mentioned to my mother that I wanted to read the texts of other religions, and specifically the Quran, just to get a good understanding of it, because I wanted to be able to reach people in those different religions, right? And she got very defensive about that. She's like, she was worried about me when I had said that. It was very weird. And I think that my desire to investigate other religions was a huge sort of pin in my deconversion. Because I had that exact experience. I started listening to these stories and reading these stories and asking myself, does any of this actually make sense? And if any of them are true, if even one of them is true, why do we have so many different interpretations for one line in each of those texts?
Yeah.
There's so many interpretations. How do we know which one is correct? Which God are we believing in today? Is it Pastor Ryan's or Pastor Paul's?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it Pope Francis? Which one? Which one is right?
Exactly.
I can't figure it out. It's way too much.
Well, what's that expression there? There's how many different denominations of Christianity? They all believe that they're the correct one. Every denomination also has almost a different version of Yahweh. Which one's the right one? But they all think they've got the right one. I think the most likely situation is none of them are correct.
Yeah,
but that's just me, right? But then again,
I completely agree. I completely agree. And going to as many churches as I've gone to, I've been to Methodist churches, I've been to non-denominational churches, I've been to those weird, less preachy, more teachy type churches, like when I lived out in Portland. I loved that church that I went to.
What does that even mean?
It was more like a lecture.
Okay.
When going to the sermons on Sunday, it was more like a lecture. It was it felt like being at school, and I love going to school. So I loved going to that particular church. And I love the music too. They had a really, really good band, and they wrote their own music. And so I loved going there just for the music. Yeah, I love music in general. That's where I started in general. As I've come out of my faith, I've realized that music is really the spiritual thing. That feeling that I get from, or that I got from religion, I get it much more efficiently from music anyways. And I've always been a pianist. I've loved playing piano.
That's not what I thought you said.
Some of my own music. Oh, it's such a weird word. I think that every single time. When I was in high school and early college years, I wrote and recorded a bunch of my own music just because I loved doing it. And it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was alive in a sense. It was very euphoric, I guess you could say.
That's exactly what I say all the time, Abram. I'm 99.999% sure that there's no God.
Yeah.
It'll never get to zero, but because can we really be absolutely sure of anything? Well, of course not.
No.
But you go where the evidence goes.
I loved those conversations around the fire back in the high school and college years, where you would just sit with a group of people discussing the origins of the universe, and everybody had their own like weird idea, and none of them were sure, or a couple of them were incredibly sure, and then the rest of them were like, I don't know, man.
Well, they don't know. What do you mean they don't know? Whether
that perspective is right. I'm just thinking about those late night fires that you have with your buddies, and you start talking about the weirdest shit, and some random person has this high confidence in some weird ass idea, and the rest of them are like, yeah, that sounds really awkward. But they're fun conversations to have with other people.
Yeah, for sure. That's true. Honestly, though, conversations around the fire tend to be the best ones, if you ask me. Oh, yeah. Or what you could, like, even just sitting in my buddy's living room, and he's got the fireplace going, and we're having a few brewskis, and we're talking about some deep dive subject or something, and you always have. They just seem to be the best conversations.
Oh yeah,
a lot of new people.
I miss those. I miss those. I used to have those with friends, and since the pandemic, none of those have really happened. Since moving in with my parents to pay off this debt, I haven't really had those.
Well, plus COVID too, right? Getting together.
That's been the killer.
Frowned upon.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can still here in BC, we're right now until February 5th. They just extended the whole lockdown thing, so we can't. I can go and visit my mom because my mom lives alone. So she's allowed to have one visitor from one of her social bubbles. So I go there every Sunday and have brunch with her. I basically pay for everything because we can't go to a restaurant. So she doesn't know how to use DoorDash. She doesn't even know how to use her fucking cell phone, for fuck's sake. And so I order off of DoorDash or whatever the hell app, Uber Eats or Skip the Dishes or one of those ones. And we always order some brunch in. And she's so funny. She gets the same thing every fucking time. Clubhouse sandwich every time. She goes, well, I like to taste. It's my favorite food. And I want to taste all the different ones from all the different restaurants. I'm like, all right, fair enough. And, I'll always, I have to have breakfast for brunch. I got to have eggs and bacon and all that, standard breakfast food.
I agree. That's the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. But Zachary, we are getting really close to the hour here. I'm going to now bring in my producer, Mr. Mikey Famine. So get your finger out of your nose, Mikey. Kind of an inside joke now. There he is. There's the man himself, Mr. Mikey Famine, my wonderful, amazing producer who's helped me improve this show quite a bit. And before we head over to the after party, which you're good for, Zachary?
Sure.
Okay, awesome.
I got more beer.
Me too. I got my little cooler here. I'm all good. And the sticker that pissed somebody off at work: "No gods, no masters." I love pissing people off. No, I don't love pissing people off. Unfortunately, it does happen.
I do.
It depends for me. I yelled Biden 2020 as I walk down the street whenever I pass the houses that still have the Trump signs out. And I recently got the greatest response. Somebody yelled back, "You'll regret it." And I'm like, "No, I won't."
No, I won't, but you will. You're already regretting it.
I doubt it. I doubt he's regretting it.
Well, he's regretting it that Trump isn't still in office.
And all those signs disappeared. It's so strange. All the signs and all the flags just got folded up and put in the garage. I was like, yeah. You tried.
I live in Trump country right now, so I can't escape it. I don't think that I'll escape it until we move.
Bye, PJ. And Wonder Lady nailed it. No, hang on. That's not the one I was looking for. That's the one I wanted. Naruto background.
Yeah, Bijou. That's the 10 tails.
Oh, Bijou. Right. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord.
Good job, Wonder Lady.
That's awesome. Get out of here with the Bijou, Mikey. Anyway, Zach, I want to thank you for being my guest today, man. It's a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. You as well.
We're gonna do the after party, guys. So if anyone is interested in jumping in here with Zachary and Mikey and myself, let me know via Twitter or Facebook if you're not on Twitter, and I will send you a link. Facebook. You hear that, Jenna? Just for you, I say that.
A screenshot of the thank you tweet.
Yeah. I always send her the screenshot. That's too funny. Which I think is cool. I think she wants to hear that, or she wants to see that, because she can't, like and reply to it on Twitter because she's not on Twitter. So, anyways, first of all, before I head out of here, there's a bunch of little thank you stuff that I want to say. Of course, Randolph and myself are going to be starting up our own show coming up here later on this year. It's a call-in show, just like the ones you're used to with the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, and Truth Wanted. We're going to be talking to people about things that they believe to, not necessarily always just about religion. Could be about anything. Until that time comes, there are some videos on the channel that you can go. Yeah, you're a little preemptive there, Mikey. Until that time comes, there are some videos that you can check out on our channel that are there already, and some of them are pretty funny. So go and check it out. It's about us constructing this studio. So, and next up, of course, as Mikey's already put up there, thanks to all my amazing patrons. You guys are why the show keeps going and keeps improving. We take, all that money goes into me paying for my production costs and all the kinds of other things. And also thank you to anyone that has ever done anything to help improve the show, like Mr. Quiet Gorilla over there, who has given me a green screen, but I have yet to have it all put together and put up. We're probably going to be using it for the True North Talk show over this one here. I actually got a flag from my roommate, which is the Atheist Science logo flag, which I'll probably hang up behind me at some point. Anyways, myself and the lovely Miss Jenna Miu, who's in the chat with us right now, are hosts of the new launch of the Nonprofits, which is one of the ACA shows, and I even have my little coaster here to prove it. There you go, see? Where I go, one of the hosts of the Nonprofit show, which you can see every Wednesday, or not every Wednesday, sorry, that's when we film it. You can see every Sunday between the Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. I'm really upset because Mandisa Thomas was involved with the last episode, and I was scheduled to be there and wanted to be there and couldn't be there because some fucking bullshit at work came up, and I had to go to some goddamn, being the head or the senior, I should say, first aid attendant I had to be there for that meeting for the new health and safety procedures. So, and that dragged on for like 4.5 hours. It was horrible. And they just kept repeating the same shit over and over again. Anyway, on the last Saturday of every month, myself, Andy, and Seamus of the Free Thought Prophets, Andy also has his own show, Laughing in Disbelief, do a little show called Atheist Drinking Out Loud. And that's usually at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll always have a guest on there with us. You never know when one of us might come knocking to drag you onto the show so we can talk about ridiculous things and make fun of them. All right, guys. And like I always say at the end of these things, don't forget about my new schedule. I do Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays now as opposed to the old Mondays, Wednesdays, because I required the Wednesdays to do the tapings for the nonprofits. And like I always say at the end of the interviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. Thank you guys for hanging out in the chat with us, and we will see you guys next time. What?
Thanks, everybody.